Salutations, Shades, and welcome back to your one-stop shop for all things strange and unusual, Talking with Shadows. The conversation everyone has, but no one wants to admit to. Here with your host, Vic Whately.
And an incredibly frustrated Marcus D. However, it's not because of our guests, because we have some fantastic guests for you guys today. Joining us in the studio today, our guests tonight are Eric and Jessica Carrier, hosts of the Prairieland Paranormal Podcast. Living in the Midwest, they have experienced much of what the Prairielands have to offer, including the paranormal. With a fascination for all things weird and strange, they're excited to share some of their own experiences, some of your experiences, and some of the interesting folklore, myths, legends, and haunted places prevalent throughout the Midwest, all while broadcasting from a creepy cornfield in central Illinois. Thank you guys so much for coming on to our podcast today. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Such a great intro. Thank you very much.
I also just can't believe I said the phrase, said Illinois. I am from the Midwest, and I said Illinois. Like, I mispronounced Illinois instead of saying Illinois.
Okay, I gotta ask the question that I'm sure all the listeners are wondering right now. How creepy is the cornfield?
Very creepy.
Especially this time of year when everything has been partially mowed over. It's not vibrant and green or even dead looking. It's just partially up and down and muddy looking.
Does any creepy things happen in this said cornfield?
We've actually not experienced anything truly creepy from our cornfield other than coyotes or other things like that.
Possums and things like that. Yeah.
Weird creatures, but nothing paranormal.
Wait,
We had a possum.
weird creatures? How weird? Are we talking chupacabra, jackalope?
You know, I kind of wish that's kind of weird, but I kind of wish I had something like that.
I would love to see a Sasquatch in my backyard, but that has not happened yet.
Corn squatch.
Vic, why are you acting like we don't have cornfields in Indiana?
Hey, we have cornfields in Indiana. We got tons of them.
Like,
although there is more than cornfields in Indiana. But if they have a creepy cornfield, I want to investigate it. I've always wanted to investigate a haunted cornfield.
Like, no one's going to believe that you're from, like, the country of Indiana with you just asking about just being fascinated by cornfields from Illinois.
Marcus, what are you not getting about potentially haunted cornfields? I've always wanted to investigate
We're
a
from
haunted
Indiana.
cornfield.
We have haunted cornfields of our own.
Point to one
There
I've
are
looked
whole
for.
movies written about that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
And I do
Thank
love
you,
Children
Eric.
of the Corn, but I would love to investigate one of these. If you
Thank you.
find one, I'm there.
Yeah.
Well, we have children, so does that make them children of the corn?
Yes, objectively,
It is,
yes.
Yes. Although I probably have to say, just for state's honor, I would say our cornfields are creepier.
Yes,
But I'm only saying that out of state pride. I have no objective proof
But if
for
you
that at all.
Think about all the people that have possibly died and been buried. There could be people who are died and buried in our cornfield somewhere, you know.
Oh, I guarantee
I'm sure
that.
there's Potter's
Years
Fields
ago.
out there.
I guarantee. I used to be really into this show called Amish Mafia, and the whole time I'm watching that show, just wondering if they're going to talk about somebody being buried in a cornfield, and it never happened, and I was so disappointed.
I loved that show.
I did.
I don't know why I loved it, but I did.
It's Amish and organized crime. Like what? It's like people are just fascinated by both of it's Amish and true crime just merged into one. Like it's a weird just mixture of just all things awesome.
And we live in Amish territory, really. There's a lot of Amish people where we live. And sometimes I'll see the buggies going by and I'm thinking,
We don't have those in Evansville. We have their restaurants and their furniture stores here nearby, but they still live outside of town, like not actually like in Evansville.
I saw some Amish folk just when I was driving down the street a few days ago.
I saw some at the King and Country concert that was here in Evansville that me and my wife went to.
Mine were coming out of a Hardee's. Less interesting.
But it was kind of weird to watch, like, because King and Countries are pretty, like, I mean, they rock, and they use a lot of drums, and watching just Amish people just doing, like, a mosh pit thing going on. It was real cool to watch. Like, it was just fascinating just to see. But, yeah. But thank you guys so much for coming onto our podcast today. We had such a fun time going on your guys' podcast.
Oh, yeah, it was a blast.
Yes. Back in August. It was cool. We got to talk about the oil pit squid, one of Indiana's famous cryptids, static people, one of our favorite entities to talk about. And I'm like, we were gearing up for October, and you know, our patrons decided that we were going to do that we were going to talk about missing 411, and I was like, we have to have somebody really cool to come in, and we were like, Prairieland Paranormal Podcast would be the people that we want to come on and talk about this with us. So we super appreciate you guys doing that.
I don't know if we're really cool, but we are happy to be here.
Dude, we realized how much that we realized that like me, Vic, and Jessica worked at the same place, like worked at like the same psych hospital for a little while. So like we just realized like just how connected our two podcasts actually were. We had just no idea until we were talking at the beginning of our episode with you. A couple questions that I want to ask because I want people to get to know you guys. How did you guys get started doing like a paranormal podcast? Like, what were you investigators before? Did you guys just jump right into doing this? Tell our listeners a little bit about how you guys started.
We kind of jumped right into it. About 18 months ago, when COVID was just getting started, we found ourselves with a lot of extra free time on our hands. And Jessica and I have both always really enjoyed the paranormal, but we've always really enjoyed the side of it that's more folklore or more history or more stories. We liked the local aspect of it. Now we live near Decatur, Illinois. So Decatur is got a lot of different types of paranormal hotspots in it. So we started noticing that we could do stories about these types of things that were common in the Midwest, and we could probably generate a show after that. So we decided we were going to start a podcast.
We wanted to for a while. I mean, we had been listening to different podcasts, cryptids and ghosts, and we just loved that kind of stuff. And we thought, well, why not just have our own podcast where we can talk about it?
Great attitude.
Absolutely fantastic.
We're not investigators. We don't go out and we don't do ghost hunting. We don't do anything like that.
Not on purpose.
I would
just accidentally.
I would label ourselves as folklorists. We like the story, we like the history, and we like to take a scientific approach to these things and see if we can explain them. And if we can't explain them, we want to give you a good story while we're doing it.
We took a similar route when we first started. Like all of our earliest episodes on our YouTube channel before the podcast was super like folklore focused from Vic, and then like trying to scientifically rationalize it away by me. So we definitely relate to that. And we for a while we actually also focused so heavily on like the Midwest. We had a whole segment of our
Candlelight Strolls.
Yeah, that we did where we just talked about the Midwest because like you guys were talking about, there's so much cool stuff. I almost swore there. There's so much cool stuff because it's true, because there's so much cool paranormal stuff in the Heartland. So seeing a podcast that highlights that was really cool for us.
Yeah, it's been fun. We have really enjoyed it. We've got 39, I think, main episodes out now, and we've got several what we call terror bites out, which are just basically scary short stories that we do. We try to do all of this with a little bit of a flair. We like dramatic type storytelling, so we are all about telling stories in a interesting and in a fun way.
I know you said that you were into the paranormal already. Have either of you guys had a paranormal experience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Had lots of paranormal experience.
And I think that's why we were interested in it, is because we had questions. We had experiences that we couldn't really, we didn't really know what was going on in some of those situations. And we wanted answers. And the way to get answers was to start doing some research. And so we started researching and trying to figure out some of our own questions as we've gone through this journey.
So do you guys have a really cool one you could share with us?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you want to talk about our visitor in our room?
Yeah, we can talk about our room visitor. That's probably the best one that we've got. This one actually took place right here in our current home, and it was probably about 4 years ago.
Yeah, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago, I guess. Yeah.
We had both gone to sleep, and I sleep on the right side of the bed. Jessica sleeps on the left side of the bed. And I had rolled over to my right side, and she had been asleep already. And it was close to midnight, because I remember looking at the clock after this happened, and I was just like, man, what just happened? This was crazy. Craziest thing we've ever experienced. Anyway, I'm laying on my right side, and all of a sudden I hear Jessica screaming, and I'm like, well, she's having a bad dream or something, so I'm rolling over to try to wake her up. And when I roll over, there's literally a person standing next to our bed.
I'd say I thought it was our son at first because our son's really tall, and this was a tall person, probably actually taller than our son, but I thought, it was our son at first, but then I realized it wasn't.
Yeah, it was definitely not our son. It was a man, and he was standing right next to our bed. And I instantly knew why she was screaming. And he was physical enough that I thought it was an intruder. And I thought I was going to have to fight this guy off. I thought that there was someone literally in our room. And I did the only thing I could think of in the moment, which is kind of silly at that time, but I gave it my best karate kick. I was like, yeah,
I love this.
And nothing. And it's still there. And at this point, I mean, Jessica and I are both just kind of going.
Like you didn't connect, or it went through them?
Nothing connected. I don't know if it was just a bad kick or if it went through them. But at this point in time, Jessica and I we're both just yelling. It's like we're thinking we're fighting for our lives at this moment.
What did he look like?
It was a man.
Very, very tall.
It was tall. He was bearded.
Mm-hmm.
He was standing next to our kind of the foot area of our bed, but closest to Jessica's side.
By any chance, was he wearing flannel?
He was not.
No, he was actually kind of cloaked in a robe.
I would call it a tunic. Yeah, I would call it kind of a tunic. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with Jewish vestments, like the clothing that they wore?
Yeah.
The Temple of Solomon and stuff like that. He looked like he was wearing different layers of robes and things like that. And they were all dark colored. They were kind of grayish or black. There wasn't any color to him. As far as like luminosity, it looked like there was no more than like, it was just enough to see him. There wasn't enough to really, illuminate any of his features at all.
Okay, I got two things I want to throw back at you.
Sure.
Okay.
One, this was, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, maybe a little more. One of the people who used to be a member of the One Candle Society, Adam Mathers, had a really strange experience where he called me up one day. He was working as, I believe, a therapist at the time, and he came home, was super tired, decided to take a nap during the day, and part of the way through the nap, he gets this very strange feeling, and he wakes up. And he looks up, and at the foot of his bed is this guy just standing there. And keep in mind, it's day, there's light coming through the windows and stuff, so he gets a really clear look at him. Guy's wearing a nice suit, the guy's slender, tall, blonde hair, short, and just with this black tie on, and just sitting there grinning at him. Adam goes to jump out of bed, but suddenly realizes he can't really move, and just his vision goes blurry, and he goes right back down. Whoa. He wakes up a few hours later, gives me a call, and I come like just hightailing it over there. And we do a search of his house for any way people could get in, and we talk about it, and it was just a very strange sort of encounter. That just reminded me a lot of your guys's.
So what happened after you tried to karate kick him?
Well, I did the next second best thing that I could think of, which was try to karate kick him again.
I really thought you were about to say you were going to pull him a gun.
That's your answer for everything.
This time with my best karate yell. And at that process, I woke up most of my kids. I mean, most of our kids were in our room in just a matter of moments after that because they thought we were dying in here, I think.
Well,
But I jumped up and I was able to turn the light on because I wanted to see what we were fighting. And there was nothing in the room once I turned the light on. It was completely gone.
Well, we also said, in the name of Jesus Christ, you need to leave.
Usually seems to work in these bedroom invader situations.
Yeah. Was this before or after you started the podcast? Just my curiosity.
This is before.
Yeah.
See, I've actually had experiences like this, like my whole life. And so to me, it was like, oh yeah, another demon attack or whatever. We don't know what it was. It may not have been a demon. I don't know what it was. But, I kind of was like, okay, let's go back to bed. Eric was up the whole night. I was just happy because I was vindicated that he saw what I saw. I wasn't the only one seeing this thing. And, and our kids, of course, were kind of freaked out because they come up into our room. They're like, what's going on? We're like,
it's hard to explain to your kids, why we just woke them up by screaming and yelling in our bedroom.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like you're like, God, what was it? I feel like you're like, oh God, who was it was it Harrison Ford then where he's like, it wasn't me, it was a one-armed man or whatever? It was Harrison Ford. And he's like, in that movie was like, So what happens? Like, was it us? It was the bearded man in the tunic.
Yes, all I did was look at our kids and I was like, bad dream, go back to bed.
Have you guys ever read any of Keel's work, John Keel?
No, I have not.
If you ever get a chance to, I want to say it's in his book, Strange Creatures from Out of Time and Space. Mm-hmm. And he has a whole chapter on just these strange bedroom invaders.
Mm-hmm. Because it's weird. A lot of them, like, you'll see different descriptions just throughout time, but a lot of the mannerisms of the people, like of the people involved, tend to be the same. Where they'll be in their bed, they wake up, there's this weird bedroom invader. He looks a certain way, then something tends to happen. They rebuke him with religion, they karate chop him, punch him, or whatever. Or then they go under their covers or something like that. Or turn the light on, they go away. It's very creepy stuff.
There is a power in the blanket. Jessica and I have talked about this before in the past, where we don't fully understand the mystery or the power of the blanket, but covering your head up for some reason really does seem to make these things go away.
Yeah, they can't get you under wool.
I'm pretty sure that's true. If I'm going to throw out a theory on that, I really think it's these things are here to try to get at that negative emotion that you're putting out. Maybe they're feeding off of it. Maybe they just get joy out of it. And when we cover up, that restores our sense of security to a degree. Mm-hmm.
That's why Fruit of the Loom underwear, like 100% cotton, like right there. I think that's.
Are you trying to keep joke or ghosts from your junk? Because trust me, they don't want it.
That just protects you. I'm just saying, a lot of stuff happens when you're in bed. I'm not telling people like what they wear to bed. I'm just saying, it might protect you one day.
Well, I think there's also strength in faith.
Oh yeah, 100% agree with that.
It's just like maybe it's that you're not as scared. Maybe it's that you're pulling on powers that are greater than yours, but. Mm-hmm. There seems to be a strength in faith.
Well, one of the really odd things with that is it also apparently works on grays, because there's a ton of encounters where someone encounters a gray in the room at night, starts praying, and the little buggers go away.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Yeah, it just seems to work.
I'm telling you now. Like if you really look at a lot of the old gray encounters and stuff, like people get abducted. They're like on the East Coast. You come into the heartland, man. We're Team Jesus. Like it starts to go down. They're like, oh man, these guys are weird.
Karate did not work, but faith did. I will say that.
Yes.
Like man, they got their lowercase T's and this guy Jesus. I don't know what's gonna happen. He might hit me with this or something. They just leave. It works, man. I'm telling you, it does. Yeah. But I super appreciate you guys sharing that story with us. I always really love comparing paranormal stories with other experiencers and stuff that's happened to them. I would also warn you guys, if you're only 39 episodes in, take it from me and Vic, sometimes you start seeing a lot more paranormal experiences after you start doing this.
Oh yeah, when you poke, things start poking back.
Yeah, so just FYI, just
that's what I was wondering with this fairy stuff. Are we going to start seeing some fairies now that we start talking about it? I mean, when I was
100%.
One of my tips, whenever I go out in the woods and I know I'm going to be like in an area where I think that it might be dangerous, I carry a little baggie of freshly shined coins.
Ooh.
Just in case like I get pixie led and I don't know where I am, I can throw them in a little fox den. And Ellie will often take like a red bell and make me take it with me.
Which was hilarious when we went to Mammoth Cave with another friend of ours, and our friend's walking around with a little bell. We're just like, this is just a case, like he just gets lost and just wanders away. He's supposed to ring this like an alarm bell.
Ellie is
when he's in danger.
Ellie's very afraid of me being stolen by fairies, so she makes me take precautions.
Well, I was reading this story actually today, and I had never heard this before. This young girl was like taken by fairies and like led away, and her grandfather, she remembered something her grandfather said about if you're taken by fairies, take your jacket off and turn it inside out and put it back on. And so she did that, and she was brought right back to her home. And I'm like thinking, what? Maybe that's the
there's a few stories like that involving the fairies where if you do something backwards or put something on backwards, it'll confuse them and it can get you out of being pixie led. Because like if you're pixie led and you're lost in an area where you shouldn't be, one of the things people say is just take off all your clothes, turn them inside out.
I often wonder too, because we're talking a lot in this month, because we're talking this month about missing 411, with people going missing in state parks and that, and there's a lot of people, more people than people would admit, by the way, that strongly believe in fairies and possibly some of their involvement with people going missing.
Well, there's so many similarities between the missing 411 case and stories of traditional fairy disappearances.
Yeah. But you were talking about turning your jacket inside out. But one of the things that David Paulides talked about was he said it was really weird that people would often go missing that wore the color red?
Yes, and that's also true in Chinese fairy tales.
Yeah.
That certain, I think it's yellow there, but certain colors will cause you to be like stolen away by the pixies.
So I wonder if the reason why you turn it inside out is to not confuse them, but it changes the color. Because on the inside it might be different. I wonder if that's how they got started. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't understand that. It didn't make much sense to me, but it was interesting.
I don't.
Well, you also see stories like that because some of the more dangerous fairies can be turned away by reciting certain prayers, but backwards. And I've heard it I've heard some authors kind of throw out this theory that like in their world, sound comes out backwards. It didn't make much sense to me, but it was at least a theory offered up.
Well, a lot of people they say that like the red is a scary color, like, the red caps, it represents blood and things like that. And I don't know, saying things backward. So don't wear red and speak backwards. I don't know.
Scottish sounds backwards to me anyway.
One of the explanations for the red color, I was reading a book on fairies a few months ago for the channel. I don't remember why, but one of the explanations for the red is that fairies don't have blood, and they're very kind of put off by the idea of blood, and it's something that can ward them off.
Which is really weird, especially if you go into national parks. One of the safety tips is you're supposed to wear bright colors like red or orange.
Screw
or
orange.
yellow.
I'm not wearing orange. I hate orange. Worst color ever.
He's very upset by the color orange.
I do not like orange. I do not like orange things. I am done with it.
Not like pumpkins.
Orange makes me look
Hates
like
Halloween just because.
Oh, I love Halloween. I just don't like orange.
That's a lot for somebody who dislikes the color orange, by the way. Just saying.
I'm having another beer.
Well, I mean, you think about that. Like when we're talking about missing 411, and you wonder why people are going into the woods, and if there really is this thing to like the colors that people are wearing. I wonder if that's what's causing some of the people that seem to be going missing in the national park system. If that's the reason why.
I'm trying to figure out why I was never abducted in the national park system, because I love to go out and just explore. And even as a kid, I would go out and look for like gnome houses and things like that. And just,
of course, that's an awesome thing to do.
So it is. And I would just do that by myself. When I was a teenager, I'd go hiking all by myself, and, it'd freak the adults out. And I'd be like, what, there's nothing wrong. And now I'm wondering, how come I didn't get abducted, I guess.
Well, fairy legend and fairy lore says that they prefer boys. So that would be one reason why you would not have been abducted, is you're not a boy.
Well, that could be.
And I like how Vic over here is trying to say like, oh, that's really cool. Even though we saw like a badger hole and he flipped his wig, like trying to make sure.
I did not flip my wig.
He did. He got very concerned, even though we stumbled upon some sort of domicile, and he's like, oh, cool. I'm like,
let me lay out what happened here. We're driving through the woods near a paranormal area.
In a national park.
Our buddy Ricky Bruckman, who's there with us on the investigating, goes, "What's that? It looks like an altar." So we pull over, and in the middle of the woods, we go out a little bit, and there is a stone altar with freshly laid flowers on it. And they weren't wilted at all. They had to have been within a fairly short period of time because it was a hot part of the year.
Hand to God this happened, by the way. I was there.
Yeah. So we basically start fanning out to see if there's anything else in the area.
And at this point, I realized that Vic is still wearing his emergency bell.
Shut up.
So I'm with him for safety.
So we spread out and we start surveying the area. And next thing I see is this great big old mound with a den in it. And I'm like, okay, altar of stone with fresh flowers on it. And there's a mound with a den in it. I'm like, I'm not going to push fate here because these are all fairy signs. And I'm like, probably best we conclude our investigation quickly and get out of here. Beyond that, I possess like all the traits for disappearing in a national park. Like, I'm of German heritage. I am autistic.
He had a red bell.
Well, that's why
he had a red bell. We had the color red on him.
That's why Ellie gets worried that I'm going to get stolen or something, because I possess like so many of the hallmarks of the people who get taken.
I'm with you, man. I would have left even before just seeing the altar. I think that would have creeped me out just enough right
Dude,
there.
it was very weird. It was very bizarre because we were at Mammoth Cave National Forest, and we were driving from the church from our investigation there. And so we're not like on some easily found trail. This is just pavement. We're just driving really fast, and there's nothing nearby. There's no cell service anywhere. And these are not trails. This is just there. Like nobody casually would be walking down there when we saw that. And then we get out, and this freshly cut flower is just laying on this stone pillar thing. I got photos of it, man. I'll put it for this because we're talking about this episode, man. I'll put it below, man, because, it looked fresh, too. Because, if you cut like a flower, it looks like it's going to die. Well, looked fresh.
Yeah, it's a super cool story.
Were there a lot of mushrooms around?
No,
we were looking.
Yeah, I told them to look for fairy
looking.
circles as soon as we started looking in the area, but we didn't see any. We stayed long enough to confirm there at least weren't any, probably within 50 feet of there. But after that, that's when I'm like, we probably want to scoot.
Do you guys think that there is something to this idea that fairies are responsible for people going missing in national parks? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think you have to realize what are fairies. You have to really think about that first, because fairies aren't necessarily the little pixie winged flying creatures that you see in Disney. And so if you think about what are fairies, are they interdimensional? Are they spiritual? Are they actual don't want to say human, but
beings,
tactile beings?
Humanoids, yeah.
What are they? And so when you think about it, like if you think, well, they're interdimensional, well, then I think that maybe it has something to do with it. It's interesting that fairy lore is throughout many cultures all around the world, and they overlap in what fairies are and what they do. So it's kind of hard to say, no, that's not really real. I think there's a possibility it could be real, and a possibility that it could be very dangerous.
When you compare fairy lore with those that go missing, it's astonishing how closely it matches.
I don't know if you guys know this, but are you familiar with witch hunter manuals?
No, please share.
After the Malleus Maleficarum came out, it first came out in Germany, but then it got a lot of reprints and spread throughout Europe. After that, a lot of other people started basically producing witch hunter manuals more localized to specific countries, England, Spain, things like that. And in a lot of the early witch hunter manuals, when they're going over what is a demon and what is not, a lot of fairies at that point are listed as demons. I don't know if it's one of the earlier citations in written word of Oberon, but I know Oberon is specifically cited in many of the early witch hunter manuals. Not in the Malleus Maleficarum, but in the ones that came after that.
I would also like to point out that we are not endorsing anything that came out during the Malleus Maleficarum or witch burning. Just so you
go
guys
back
know.
and look at our episode on the Malleus Maleficarum. It is foul.
Yeah.
I'm not supporting their views. Just want to throw out a tidbit.
But Eric, you said something about that you said that some of the disappearances stack up with fairy encounters. Talk a little bit more about that.
So if you look at fairy lore, and let's just talk about a book in particular. So there's a book called The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries. It's by an author by the name of W.Y. Evans Wentz. Mm-hmm. And this book is a very popular book when it comes to fairy culture, fairy folklore, and just some of the things like people disappearing late in the evening, people disappearing near boulder fields, people disappearing near berry bushes. All of these things have direct folklore that's associated with them, that's recordable and is related to fairies.
Like missing clothes, just things like that. And this book wasn't written in modern days. I mean, it was written in 1910. And so it really had no association with 411 cases. It's almost like we as a modern society can't say there are fairies. So we've got to say, we don't know why they're gone. They're missing, just 411,
I definitely agree with you there. I think a lot of people that talk about the missing 411 phenomenon are not necessarily educated on fairy lore to see some of the connections that like you guys that you guys are talking about in there. And I think that's why you see that like, I don't know, sort of shrug.
Do you think less people would go missing if everyone carried around a little baggie of freshly shined coins in their pocket?
And a Tinkerbell?
Yep. Marcus is over there giving me a look because he makes fun of me to no end about this.
I'm just saying, man, if people really start getting into this cryptocurrency fad, this is spelling some pretty bad news for people.
Dude, you can get a bag of pennies.
You're gonna throw cryptocurrency, like we can throw like dog coin at the we can just throw your phone.
I think less people would go missing if they went together in groups. I think
Don't
that's
give me that look.
A big part of it. I mean, if you're going to be easy for fairies to come get you, you got to be separate from your group. You can't be together.
Marcus
Like
is.
phenomenon.
Marcus
I hear
is
you
giving
gotta
me a
carry
look.
iron. Is
That
there
or carry iron. I like
Yep.
that idea too.
carry iron of some sort?
So shiny iron. You guys heard it here. Carry a gun. Like, I'm not saying shoot him. I mean, throw that into the hole and just be like, here you go. Like, there you go. Now they're, and then they're going to be armed.
Oh, they're gonna be pissed if you throw iron into a burrow. Though that's gonna get them to chase you. That if they
Yeah,
weren't mad at
coming
you
out.
already.
And then shoot you.
I don't know if you guys have heard of the phenomenon. We came across this while researching this,
Yeah.
and it's where people that are in a line, the last person goes missing.
Yes.
You heard about that? Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe it doesn't work to go in groups.
We're not in a line.
Well, it's not being at the end of the line.
That's the buddy system. That's what we need. Not single file.
He's just mad at me because if I think something paranormal is going on, I'm going to chase it. And if someone doesn't keep up with me, that I can go it alone during that.
No,
moment.
I'm
he
just
gets
worried-
so mad at me about that.
I'm just worried you're not going to ring your emergency bell like if
It's
something
not-
happens and
it's-
nobody's going to be able to find you in
It's just
the woods.
It's just a tiny little bell that hangs off my keychain. It's not an emergency bell.
Is it like a rape whistle for fairies?
It's not.
It really is.
Oh my god.
That he was wearing. I can't make this up.
It was more to make Ellie feel safe. Oh my
Well,
god.
seriously,
you-
what else can you do? I mean,
I
it's
know,
not
that's
like
tr-
you're going to
that's
have
true.
a cell phone and
Well-
you're not going to call someone.
Well, I think you're right. I think people have often, especially if you're like by yourself, there's a feeling of powerlessness. I think for some people that aren't very, adept in the woods, like if they get lost, or they get disoriented, or just something like that happens. So sure, absolutely.
Are you guys familiar with the idea of being pixie led?
Yes, a little bit.
Okay, good. Because I say it a lot. I wanted to make sure that you guys were familiar with it. It's something that I find really fascinating.
Is that the confusion that's associated with coming near fairies or other types of?
Yeah, or some old English tales will say, like, if you are suddenly confused in a familiar place, or if you're in 1 acre of wood, but somehow can't find your way out, that means a pixie has made you pixie-led. What
I've
about-
also heard
Oh,
that
sorry.
if they call you and you're following them, but you don't want to be following them, that can also be pixie led too. It's
Yep.
like a siren type call going on. And I wonder, actually, I was just thinking about it, what kind of power maybe a faith would have with this too in these situations. I'm not sure.
Well, there's so many stories about the Fae and Jesus. Like, there's a ton of stories on that. Like, there's one we were going over a while ago where this was a story from Ireland. I don't remember the province, but two priests were riding out in the middle of the night to go see a man who's dying. And they're traveling through a woods where it's known that Fae live. A man stops out of the road with a green cloak on and says, basically, when you get to the dead man, ask what will happen to the good folk when Jesus comes back. And so they go back and they ask the guy, and he kind of sits up in bed and says, if one drop of blood is found in the good folk will find salvation. So they're riding back now, and the fairy stops them again, and he asks, what did you learn? And they basically tell him, and he takes a knife and draws it across his arm, and only this greenish gray sap comes out. And basically says, since we will not have salvation, we'll always be the enemy of humans, and not to ride through this woods again.
That's interesting. In a lot of the old Fae stories, green, the color green represents the fae. And a lot of people from the old days or whatever, they knew that. They knew when someone said, someone's coming along with a green cloak or wearing a green hat or something like that, that it's going to mean a fairy. I actually read about an encounter where there was a man and he was going fishing out in the woods by himself, and he came across the fae. Apparently there are different types of fae, and this type of fae was known as the gentry, where they were the same size as people, but very beautiful and knowledgeable and could live forever. And one of them came up to him and kind of warned him that some of the other fairies wanted to take him, and so he probably needed to get away from this area. But in also talking to him, he explained that his mother was going to die and in the next 11 months, and he needed to go back home, which is why they're sparing him to go see his mother. But he needed to make sure that his mother had been baptized before she died. And sure enough, he went back, and within that time period his mother had died. But I thought it really interesting that the fae would really care that the mother had been baptized.
There's a lot of interesting interactions between fae and Christianity, but one of my favorite forms of fae disappearance, are you familiar with reffing? Okay, I found 3 different accounts in Ireland of people attesting that this had personally happened to them, but apparently the fae like to play hurling.
I
really hope that it's not curling. Is what they want to
it's
do.
not curling. It's hurling. I had to think back to the story of Cú Chulainn, and I'm like, wait, what sport did he play? I'm like, oh yeah, hurling. But they like to play hurling, and often they don't trust each other to be fair refs. Mm-hmm. So if you're traveling down a road at night, you may get grabbed by the fae and asked to ref the game. But if you're not very clever, the losing team will kill you.
Oh.
So you have to find a way the only way to come back from these situations is to find a way to make it a tie and make sure everyone's okay with it being a tie. I thought that was like my favorite form of fairy disappearances.
I thought you were going to talk about like the time that like the story from the UK where the fae moved to church.
Oh,
like allegedly, like when. God,
I'm trying to remember the story. It was, was it in, I think it was in Ulster maybe, where a church was built on top of a brownies barrow. And it was either brownies or Spriggans, I think. I can't recall. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
I heard about this one, yeah.
Yeah, and in the middle of the night, they moved the whole church stone by stone over to the next hill over.
Like, not gonna happen. Nope. Just move them over.
There's so many stories about, like, and this is almost a global occurrence about there being this other folk and there being a conflict with humanity and humanity driving them underground. And that seems to be a commonality in the fae stories about everywhere.
So do you guys think that the disappearances for missing 401 are just, like, is it fae? Is it a part of it? Is it the whole thing? Do people just not know? Like, what's your guys' thoughts on, like, what's your guys' overall thoughts on it, just connected, like, with the national park system?
The logical part of my brain wants to say that it's just people making dumb mistakes in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the paranormal part of my brain that says, you know what? There's a lot of history. There's a lot of folklore that has to do with fae or other types of cryptids that could potentially be involved in this.
Dude, we've talked about fae like this whole time instead of cryptids. I know.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things because, when you're in the woods and you're by yourself, I mean, a bear could take you out or a cougar. I mean, I've been hiking before and seen a cougar. There's a lot of things that could take you out, but I don't think that we should discount that part of them could be fae related, especially since we have these similarities between the old folk tales and people missing. It's like uncanny how they kind of follow these, like, okay, they're going to go away right at dusk, or something like that. There's just these overlaps that make it seem that way.
Yeah, you were talking about being pixie led, and that's a major thing within this missing 411 stuff. People that are found typically are very confused, and they find that they've been walking around in circles and they don't know where they're at, and they seem like they're potentially, like you've said, pixie led. And it could be several days, it could be several hours, and they're just in this overwhelming state of confusion.
They have a time loss too.
Mm-hmm.
First, I gotta say, it's super cool that you've seen a cougar. I've taught survival for years and years. Like when I was in college, I paid my way through college by working teaching survival during the summers, and I've never seen a cougar. I've seen all sorts of bears. I've seen bald eagles. I saw lynx in an area that lynxes weren't supposed to be. I saw a bobcat, but I've never seen a cougar, and that is so freaking cool.
Well, I saw it, and it was hiding in the brush, like it wasn't like it was going to pounce, but it was just kind of just watching. And I just looked over and I thought, that's a big cat.
Were you scared or were you cool?
My brain didn't register to be scared. I was just like, what is that? That's a huge cat. And then it like disappeared into the brush. I mean, like I saw it there 1 second and then it just moving just a little bit. It had like been camouflaged and disappeared and I couldn't find it anymore. And so I really wasn't that scared until I started thinking about it. And then I started to get scared. And my cousin she was probably maybe about, I don't know, 50 yards behind me. And she was coming up and then I was just like, well, we got to go. We got to get out of here.
I know what you mean. I've been in that situation where I'm like, is that a bear? Oh my God, I'm seeing a bear. And then afterwards it's like, oh shit, that was a bear.
Bears are so huge. We saw a bear when we were in Smoky Mountain National Park and we were just hiking and you could not see it until it crossed in front of you.
Oh man.
And then it just disappeared.
Me and my wife also saw a bears on our honeymoon. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. We were driving up through like one of those trails that you drive through, but she had bought this tiny bear squeaky toy and she wanted to see bears. So she rolled down the window and started making like squeezing it. So it was making like distressing small bear sounds.
Do you know what that is?
What?
Do you know what that is?
That's a way to die.
No, that's
called
what
that is.
Have you guys ever heard of apotropaic magic?
Nuh-uh.
Okay, it's a medieval concept of either like attracts like or like repels like. And it's why one of the reasons that you would put gargoyles on churches so that the like would repel like or distract it. But no, that is straight up like apotropaic magic.
There's also a really old account from back in the day where that's how you get eaten by a bear. That's how, like, by making it sound like you've got their cubs. And yes. I about left her on the mountain.
we came across a couple cubs once when we were driving. When was that? Like about 3 years ago. Yeah. And people were stopping by the side of the road to take pictures of these cubs. And I'm sitting thinking, if there's cubs,
oh my God,
there's a mama bear. Let's not stop the cars and get out and look at these cubs. Let's just keep going because that was frightening.
Oh my God. Once again, so jelly because I've never seen bear cubs before.
That bear experience taught me one very important thing. We did not see that bear when it was coming to the trail.
Yeah.
We saw that bear as it crossed the trail, and we did not see that bear once it went off the trail. Yeah. So you cannot tell me that something like a Sasquatch cannot exist.
I know.
In the woods.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I had a stinking bear walk out on me and I didn't see it before or after.
Yeah, there's researchers that work in India and like tracking leopard or large cat populations. And one of the things that they'll often say is, we found elephant trails. We know they're out there. We've heard them. We've never actually laid eyes on them in the 15 years we've been out here. But we know they're here.
And now you guys can hear, like, when Vic's talking about stuff like, oh, man, that's really cool. I've never seen bear cubs or bobcats or bears.
I've seen bobcats.
And it's so fascinating. And now you know why he has to wear his emergency bell every time he goes into the woods.
I've seen bobcats. I had to track that bobcat for 2 days to see it. I really wanted to see that bobcat.
Again, now you know why he has to have the emergency bell.
I can confirm your elephant story. I work with a guy that lived in Africa for several years. He worked doing some church missionary stuff over there. And he said he used to take people out on expeditions and he would be pointing out elephants. They're there. There's one there. There's one there. And no one else would see them. They're huge, huge creatures, but no one else could see them.
That is definitely true. To spot an animal in its natural habitat, you kind of have to train your eyes to spot them. Like, I can usually pick up most animals in the woods around me, but that wasn't always true. That's only because my dad would drag me out in the woods all the time just to train my eyes to spot these sort of things. Because if not, they're blending in with the natural environment. You're just not going to see them.
Were you sick the day whenever the lesson for like not walking up to bear cubs in the woods?
My dad instilled a lot of confidence in me in the woods.
You just sick that day? Okay.
I think also as human beings, we're kind of gullible. There's this other podcast that I listen to called The Storage Papers. You guys may or may not heard of that, but the very first episode of that show is called Baby Cries. And it's a story. It's an audio drama, so it's a fictional story, but it's a story of a guy who is out running in the woods, and he all of a sudden starts hearing baby crying. And he's drawn to it because he's, as a human being, he wants to go and he wants to check out, find out why this baby is crying in the woods.
I think I know what's about to happen. This is probably going to go bad.
And as he's going through the woods, he's getting closer and closer to a cave. And as he walks into the cave, he can start seeing human remains and other things like that laying there. And obviously he comes in contact with a creature. I'm not going to spoil the story in case someone wants to go listen to it. But he's then chased through the woods by this creature, and this creature's distress call is a baby crying. And it's just kind of creepy because, as a human being, if I'm walking through the woods and I hear a baby crying, that's something I instinctively want to go check out, right?
Oh yeah.
I don't want to be mean. So are you saying right now you're advocating for don't investigating distressing sounds in the woods, guys?
Just saying that we're gullible enough that we're going to go investigate a distressing sound.
That's actually a very common thing in fairy tales, is you hear a baby crying, or you hear someone that and you hear their voice, and it's a perfect mimic. And that's just a common thing because, honestly, if I hear my child say mom, I'm going to turn around and go, even if I know they're not there, I'm still going to be like, oh, wait, did they sneak in the car? Or they, I'm going to try to figure out how they got there.
I think the message is investigate it, but be wary because it could be something else.
Screw them kids. That's apparently
keep your bell on you.
Yes, keep the bell.
There, now you agree the bell's a good idea.
No, it's a good idea for you because I'm not going to get caught by this stuff in the woods. It's not going to fall for me, like listening to distressing baby crying sounds in the woods or cries for help.
I'm probably too old. They're not going to want me, but what makes someone fairy? Makes fairies want to capture them. It's interesting. We were reading up on the stuff, and a lot of times it's people who have like blonde hair. It's like, that's interesting.
Blue eyes, dramatic ascendancy.
Yeah, young.
I don't know why they would be interested in those types of things, but that fairy folklore says that they're certainly interested in those types of features for some reason. My
only guess would be in the Book of Invasions when they're talking about the Tuatha De Danann, which eventually becomes the legend of the fairies way later. They're always described as being fair-haired, and even like Bresk, who was only like half Tuatha De Danann, they still talk about him having this very special fair hair.
So I got to ask, is there a book you haven't read?
There's
tons.
How to jump a car? That's for what? Like how to jumpstart a car? That's a book he hasn't read. The owner's manual for his car. That's one. I can tell you that for sure.
Sorry, I read a lot of folklore.
Harry sounds like
he's just saying really smart stuff just to make himself sound smarter.
I'm not smart. I just read a lot.
He's just spouting that off.
I'm sorry, guys.
That's all. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. I like listening to it because it's interesting to me.
Yeah,
it's interesting that people have enough information to write about this stuff.
Oh yeah.
We're getting towards the main part of the bulk part. So I want to start wrapping up people's final thoughts on the Fae, because truthfully, when we set this up, we were talking all about like fairies, and this was going to be fairies and cryptids, and we went the entire time talking about fairies, which is awesome. So we may end up either continuing that or branching into cryptids in the Pillow Talk segment of the podcast. But Vic, what's your thoughts on missing 401 in the Fae connection? Like,
okay, my general thought on folklore in general is these are the survival tips our ancestors have left us. I don't think folklore is verbatim truth, but I think it holds messages for us. I think that whatever we have assigned to being Fae in like modern culture, This is a description of an entity our ancestors have encountered and has left us messages about. And it's important to heed those messages because, I mean, it matches up pretty well. Like that's kind of my general thought is it's kind of important to heed these old lessons.
I'm gonna do mine, then we'll get your guys' thoughts on it. For me, I think the missing 411 phenomenon is people forgetting those lessons. I think that is what is going on with the missing 411 phenomenon, where people are talking about they're recounting all these similarities, they're describing all these things that are happening, and people forgetting, like what Vic was talking about in that. And I think that's what we're seeing with the missing 411 phenomenon is we're seeing a return to that lore. I think we're seeing return to that legend, return to those kinds of experiences with people. And so I think if people would pay more attention to that kind of folklore and that kind of legends, that they would start seeing those similarities again. But what's your guys' thoughts on missing 411, Faye, just anything that you guys want to talk about?
Well, I agree with both of you, actually. So I agree that there is a lot of truth to folklore. I think that as we've investigated folklore across our podcast, we've always found what we've thought were at least branches of truth in most of it. So, yeah, I think that there probably are things out there like fairies. I think that there are things out there like cryptids. I think that there are things out there like giant birds that could potentially sweep snatch somebody up.
I told you we should talk about Thunderbirds, but he didn't want to.
I think that, I think the missing 411 phenomenon is real. Can it be completely contributed to fairies or cryptids or other types of folklore? Absolutely not. But when you study these types of folklores and you look at the similarities, it's uncanny. There is so many things in fairy folklore that show up in the missing 411 phenomenon. Why are people's shoes, found just on the ground and no body?
Or next to some water.
Why are their clothes neatly folded up next to a lake or a river? These things are all part of fairy folklore if you delve into fairy folklore. So I would never sit here and say that, this is absolutely fairies, or cryptids or other types of beings or other, but I think that it's a combination of things. And I think the combination is poor judgment in humans,
naivety,
being in the wrong place at the wrong time, probably encounters with animals or other types of natural phenomenon. I think it's also partly going to be encounters with these types of entities as well.
Why have fairy tales? Why have them in the first place? It is for parents to instruct their children, or grandparents to instruct their grandchildren. And a lot of times it's so weird that for some reason in our 21st century we think that these are just myths and legends, whereas for thousands and thousands of years they were actually taken seriously. Now we're like, it's just to keep people away from the woods so they don't get lost or they don't get eaten by a bear or something. But for thousands and thousands of years, millennia, people were being told these stories handed down from not just in Europe, all over the world. And they had the same similarities, don't go in the woods by yourself at night. Someone's going to try to kidnap you. And so there's got to be some merit to these things. And I think it's kind of funny when we just, think, it's just a fairy tale. It's Disney. It's nothing real. So I think that there is some, like everyone has said here, there's some truth. Getting to that truth, that's the question there.
We could attribute a lot of this to fairies, but I mean, in truth, there's a lot of these different types of creatures that probably do have some form of existence. Even when we did this episode, we focused mostly on the Native American aspect of it. And there are creatures like puckwudgies. Are you guys familiar with them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So puckwudgies, are part of Native American lore. And if you live in Massachusetts or if you live in Indiana, there's potentials to have encounters with puckwudgies. And these creatures, just like fairies, are known to cause problems for humans. They can make you confused, and
Kidnap you.
they can kidnap you. They can kill you, and they can push you off of a cliff. So there's lots of different types of these creatures that
Sasquatch and dogmen and trolls and goblins and gigantic things. There's so many things that I don't know. Are they combined? Are they the same thing? Or are they separate? I don't know.
Oh, Ellie, her family comes from the Cherokee Reservation in Chattanooga. So every bush on my property and under every tree on my property, there's this little clay doll with some little fabric dresses and stuff on it. Just kind of laid around the property because that's what her grandma taught her would keep the little people of the woods away from messing with your house.
And I think that G.K. Chesterton said it best when he said fairy tales are more than true, not just because they tell us dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten.
Oh yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth in that statement when it comes to the missing 411 phenomenon, and we've been talking about fairies with this. So I really want to thank you guys so much for coming on to the podcast today, because we're about to slip into our pillow talk segment, but
this has been so much fun.
Oh, absolutely. You guys were top notch. We absolutely knew that we wanted to bring you guys in when we did this discussion on fairies and missing 411. So the podcast is Prairieland Paranormal Podcast. Where could everybody find you guys?
We are on all major podcast players. You can find us on any of your favorite listening devices. We also have our own website, which is www.prairielandparanormalpodcast.com. And you can check out our episodes there. We have a blog there.
We're on Facebook,
Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, just about anywhere where you consume podcasts, you can find our show.
I would also this is definitely a plug for you guys, by the way. You guys have the coolest website, by the way, of any paranormal podcast that I've seen, by the way.
You.
I am not making that up, by the way. The coolest looking, just fun to navigate. I highly recommend people checking out your guys' podcast. I just looking at it. All of this information is going to be in the show notes, so that I highly recommend people.
I kind of feel like I'm going to find some good articles on fairy folklore.
Yeah, people should absolutely go check out Prairieland Paranormal Podcast. It is absolutely just top notch gold standard from us guys.
We have an episode similar to this one. I can't tell you what number it is, but it's Little Folks of the Woods, and it talks a lot about fairy folklore as related to North America and Native American history.
That is neat. Put your people listening, man. Put your guys' thoughts in the comments below on this. Do you guys think that the missing 411 phenomenon is a connection with fairies? Do you guys think that it doesn't match up enough? Do you guys think it's a smaller piece to a much bigger thing? We want to let you guys know. Put that in the comments below. If you guys are listening to this, that means please give us a like, subscribe to us wherever you guys are listening to this. Give us a review. We super appreciate that. Let us know what you guys thought of Prairieland Paranormal. If you guys like to have it back, please let us know. Probably will. I can just feel it, but
appreciate it, guys.
We're gonna have you back.
But don't worry, because we're gonna keep you guys talking here in the Pillow Talk segment. But until next time, guys, keep believing,
because we'll keep listening.
All right, guys, we're gonna slide into the Pillow Talk segment of our podcast. If you want to check out the rest of this awesome podcast, all you got to do is go over to our Patreon and sign up. For as little as $1 a month, you get all the rest of this episode, as well as all of the extended parts of all of our podcasts, as well as bonus episodes that we put up exclusively for our patrons, such as our stuff with awesome episodes such as Valiant Thor, the Crawler, which is our most recent one that we put up. And truthfully, we may end up doing another one. I'm missing 411 because there's more to do.
And I want to do a Patreon video on the Loganfell worm.
Okay, but before we get any further, by the way, I'm going to tell Prairieland Paranormal, you guys just unlocked an achievement, because we went this entire episode not talking about the alcohol that we were drinking. So, cheers to y'all. So we're going to have to do this like an hour later as we've been talking, by the way. But for this episode, we've been drinking, me and Vic have been drinking Quaff On Peanut Butter Busted Knuckle.
We've had this one before, but it's really good.
You say that, but I don't remember it.
We definitely have.
Does it have a peanut butter flavor to it?
It does.
It does. It's a very smoky, peanut buttery flavor. It's really good. It's like drinking, feels like tastes like Guinness, then like just eat
It doesn't taste like
Hang
Guinness.
on,
No,
will you
this
let me
does not
finish?
at all taste like
You
Guinness.
plebe. It tastes like if you take a shot of Guinness and then took a bite of like a spoonful of peanut butter.
It doesn't, guys. It
And
does
the-
not. He's just being wrong.
Will you let me? Oh my god! And the aftertaste is this particular beer.
No, guys,
Are you sick?
everyone out there, go try this beer and tell Marcus how it tastes nothing like Guinness.
I didn't say it tasted like Guinness. I said it tasted like the aftertaste if you drank
Nope,
Guinness
nope.
and a spoonful of peanut butter.
Nope.
You plebe.
I will go get a Guinness and a spoonful of peanut butter and prove you wrong.
That's the next episode.
Yes. That's what we're doing next episode.
A taste
Yep.
test.
I
Like
Yes.
do these taste the same?
Well,
Does the aftertaste taste?
It's
the
the after. That's what. Yeah,
It's
it does.
not
It's
going
good.
to.
Doesn't know what he's talking about.
well,
Anyway.
Jessica and I don't drink alcohol, but we did go down to our big box beverage store today to see what we could find that might be interesting for the show today. And we picked up some specialty sodas.
What'd you pick up?
We picked up the brand is called Avery's. Apparently, they're out of New Britain, Connecticut. And I picked up something called Monster Mucus, and
I love
it's
that.
a strawberry blueberry soda from their it's called let's see.
It's so disgusting.
It's so disgusting.
I love that. You said Bid Box Beverage. Is that like an actual brand, or are you guys just not wanting to give a shout out to corporate
Yeah.
America?
We have a
Friar
store here
Tuck's.
called Friar Tuck.
Okay.
and, it's similar to probably other big box beverage stores where it's all they do is serve different types of sodas and liquors and beers and things like
Okay,
that.
we're going to
Kinda
see if we
funny,
can
though,
find
like, kids
one.
cannot come in unless they're accompanied by an adult.
Yeah, it's a 21 and over store.
I like that.
Let's see if we have one around here because I want to see if we can try this like Monster Mucus stuff.
That sounds
Yeah,
really good.
I got Bug Barf, which
Ooh.
is kiwi pineapple.
I
And
like
it's actually
that.
Pretty good.
Very
That-
citrusy. I like that.
That sounds up my alley.
Yeah, they're both actually very good, made with real cane sugar and very tasty.
I couldn't do the blue one. There was a molded fruit,
It was a fungus. It was
fungal
a
fruit or
fungal
something like
fruit
that.
or something like that.
I just couldn't make myself.
I like
do
how
it.
I like how fungal fruit was a line, but kiwi, like hairy fruit's okay.
Yes, exactly.
If we
Bug
find
Barf,
them,
we can do that, but not fungal fruit.
if we find them, I will try the fungal fruit one.
Okay, that's fine with me. You can eat the fungusy fruit. Like, from the guy who just said, like, I taught survival skills forever. He'll be like, I'll eat this fruit with fungus
I
on it.
have eaten
Like-
like every sort of bug native to Indiana that you can eat. I'm a pretty adventurous eater.
You're just
Since you eat weird things, I was at a friend of mine's house and she has like some woods behind her house, and it was funny because all I'm thinking is there Bigfoot back here or something like that? But
Oh, I believe
but
that.
she showed me this huge mushroom that was like the size of 2 basketballs.